happening?
Are we live?
Now, I wish we had the bell ring, the fight night. Ding ding. Ladies and gentlemen. In the red corner, you dig me? A show about a Jew. A show about a crew. A show about an artist. A show about male genitalia. It's none other than Dave. FX's own.
Yes, sir.
Lil Dicky's own Dave. And in the blue corner, representing the black folks. You know what I'm saying? Representing the ATL, none other than Atlanta, man. Childish Gambino, the spirit of Donald Glover was in the building. You know what I'm saying? The spirit of Lakeith Stanfield was in the building, man. You know what I'm saying? Dave, Atlanta, all the way live.
All the way live. David Atlanta, yes indeed. We're getting into that recommended and review. Know exactly how we give it up on the show. Yo, before we even start getting into the comparison of these two things, man, I think it's super important to appreciate this Dave, this Dave as on its own, as just give it its kudos. I personally think that this is some of the best comedic TV that has come out in a long time for us. I think that the direction that this cast has taken, the writers that have taken this, is one that shows a lot of artistic integrity and artistic vulnerability. And we say that vulnerability is powerful. This shit is so funny, man. This shit is so funny. If you haven't seen Dave, you got to give it a look. Season 1 was good. Season 2 is better. What you feel about Dave?
I think Dave is super entertaining. I think it's really just like refreshing in terms of its honesty in a lot of ways. I think it's a good story. I have a particular character. We'll get into it. The Gator, I think, is one of my favorite characters on TV. Yeah, man, I like the show a lot, and I have almost nothing but good things to say about it. And it's important for me to start with that love because I am firmly on the side of Atlanta in this conversation.
I mean, look, for the sake of conversation, right? I'll take the side of Dave. Because they're both 2 seasons in, hip hop focused shows that the main character, you could argue, is Darius on Atlanta. You could argue the main character is Darius, right? But although it is told through the vision of Childish,
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I would say that in Atlanta, the main characters, and I'll that's another point I was going to make, but I think the main characters are more equally shared on Atlanta. In fact, each of the main characters and even some of the side characters have their own episode that don't have any other characters in it. So I think it's a lot more shared with Atlanta.
I can see that. What a big criticism that I have between the two, right? Especially if we're going into the shared exposure of the characters, and now we're looking at what they would call the lead supporting role. In Atlanta, you could say one of the lead supporting roles is Darius, right? The character Darius, who has been a vehicle of obscure thoughts and interesting input into the show. I think in season 1 they nail the Darius character by making him somewhat I don't want to say elusive, but definitely difficult to understand. In that, comparing that to the character that they bring up with Gator, dude, I think Gator is so much more of a real character. And because that this is a Jewish / white show, being able to the inserting of the black voice around what is essentially a black themed show is executed flawlessly by Gator. I don't think that he misses the mark ever. You'll be watching something and you'll think to yourself, man, like that episode where they're together and he's like, man, listen, I'm not homophobic. I just don't want to watch 2 dudes doing this in front of me. You know what I mean? But even a small quip like that is such an honest insert to the thought process of what is like the black voice around a Jewish white theme show in a black theme.
I actually think Gata is the only reason that this is even a conversation. I think you're absolutely right that Gata in either show is the most satisfying character. But I think the reason for that is that Dave is much more concerned with character arcs in a linear narrative. Atlanta is is much more a nebulous representation of life. But I think because of that, it doesn't take a character like Darius as seriously, and there isn't the same continuous buildup and payoff, right? The episodes of Dave connect to each other a lot more than the episodes of Atlanta, in that if somebody's upset, if the episode ends with somebody upset, you'll see them upset in the next episode unless we understand why that's resolved, right? Whereas in Atlanta, for example, Childish and his love interest Van can be together in one episode, be broken up in the next episode, have a huge fight, and then in the next episode they wake up in bed together, right? It's a more zoomed out snapshot of each other's life. And even though Gata is a more fully fleshed out character, I think Darius is used in more interesting ways, right? So while we get this full satisfying appreciation of Gata by watching his whole arc, Darius like shows some other like issues in such a quick snapshot way. A great example of this is when Darius goes to the shooting range, and everyone else at the shooting range is shooting at human targets, but Darius is shooting at a dog target.
Dog.
And so in that 2-minute moment, you get both a snapshot of who he is as a person, how differently he thinks. You get this issue raised of what it's like to be a black person in this space with a whole bunch of white people that are toting guns or whatever, and for them to get upset with you. And then you get this weird, more human narrative about, well, is it weirder to shoot at human targets with lethal force, or is it weirder to shoot as dog targets? And then connecting that back into white people's obsession with dogs, right? And so I think even in Darius has multiple moments like that where he just has this more varied social commentary in a moment where it doesn't feed it to you the way that Dave spoon feeds it to you. And sometimes being spoon fed is more satisfying, but what I personally like about Atlanta, and I think that the rewatch value is higher because you pick up on different themes every time you watch it. The first time you might just think, huh, it's funny, human target, dog target. Second time you watch it, you'd be like, oh yeah, white people love their dogs. Third time you watch it, you might be like, this fits so well in with Darius's character, who later says people love dogs when he takes Earn to get money based on breeding puppies. So it's like it gets deep, man. But where else?
It does get deep. It does get deep, and I'm glad that you brought up that particular that particular moments in the show, because it does have many areas where the show is redeeming in that sense, being like, all right, cool. Darius is definitely able to insert ideas and opinions that can later you can reflect on, right? In a similar moment, if that is one of the observative, because it seems like both of these characters are the voice, are the vehicles in which ideas and opinions are brought through, right? Like you have the Darius. Check this out, right? You have the Darius character in the beginning where he goes, everything is made up, all words are made up, bro. Stay woke, right? At the beginning of the show where he's like, that word's made up. He goes, every word is made up, bro. Stay woke. And then you have also on the Dave side of it, where you have essentially Dave and his black friend breaking. So you have the scene, right, where you have Gata and you have his black friend who are then coming to visit Dave and Benny Blanco in their respective, in Benny Blanco's house, and they're going through the usual, what we'd refer to on the show. There's no other way to put it than I don't know, how do we even put it? A gay bromancing? What's the correct terminology for that?
Yeah, I think the show is playing with the idea that these two presumably heterosexual white men enjoy testing the limits of their sexuality because they've never been rejected for anything, and so they like to play this game of chicken with who can be who can cross the line or toe the line of heterosexuality, because just for the thrill of it, just because it feels uncomfortable and they find humor
Exactly, right. And in that humor, what's particularly interesting about that moment, which I thought was actually an arc when it came to the commentary of the show, is that you have Darius Gator go, yeah, you guys are allowed to do this because there's never been a consequence for you being who you are. Because there's no consequence of you being who you are, you're able to then create these imaginary lines that then force you to confront that you're now trying to find your self-imposed limit about who you are. And then the retort that he has, he goes, have you ever seen a black bromance movie? You know what I mean? Have you ever seen a black bromance movie? You have many white homeboy romance movies. You got Wedding Crashers, you've got etc., etc., etc. That list keeps going. But he points it out, and they think about it, and they don't have it, right? And it's like, this is nothing to do with homophobia. It's just the reality that outside of that, at any point of who you identify as a black man, there is always going to be a consequence of your reactions outside of your own choosing, regardless of how you want to be able to define yourself. So the pursuit of you and trying to find lines of where you are uncomfortable or your self-identity or whatever, that option is not there.
Yeah. They're tweaking, by the way. There's also Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy. There's Bad Boys with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith. There are black.
That is a wrong that is a bromance movie.
Yeah.
There's All the Way Live podcast every Wednesday. Y'all should go check it out.
There you go. There's Soul Men with Bernie Mac and Samuel L. Jackson. That's underrated movie. R.I.P. to Bernie Mac. But I think even the scene that you just laid out, right? Like, while the show, Dave, does address some important themes like masculinity, like a cultural appropriation, it first of all, it sticks kind of to those themes, right? And in different episodes, I would say cultural appropriation, masculinity, and relationships are the core themes of Dave, and they kind of carry throughout all the episodes, right? And even though, here, I'll go to the first scene and then we'll talk about the humor in Dave. But that scene ends. Do you remember how that scene ends that you're talking about?
With somebody has to look into somebody's butthole. Yeah.
And that sums up Dave, right? There might be a real reason behind it, and there might be we might explore the emotions behind having to do that, but that is the core of Dave. And so there's a scene that kind of touches on sexuality in Atlanta, right? Where they're in prison holding, and Earn, after getting into a fight with Paperboy and some other guy outside of a gas station, I think, a shot goes off, they get arrested. Paperboy is able to bond out. Earn is sitting in the prison holding. And we have this interesting interplay of heterosexual male interactions where you have the humor of some guy is sitting there talking about his homeboy that he hasn't seen in a long time, but that they just ran into each other tonight, decided to get a couple drinks, and shit went left and they ended up in prison. He's like, man, I knew I should have never hung out with this dude. And the other guy's like, I'm sorry, man. I ain't seen you in such a long time. And we get this kind of humorous aspect of like the quintessential, like, oh man, if I never would have hung out with him, I never would have got into trouble. And just kind of this thing that Black people have to carry when we hang out in groups and when we hang out together, when we try to have fun. And you have that kind of interplay between all the people that are in this holding cell. And then you have this other guy that's acting real weird, sitting next to Childish Gambino. And then his homegirl walks in, or a man who is cross-dressing. We're not told how that person identifies, but they come and sit down. And the man that was acting weird with Childish Gambino before starts speaking to this other person like that's his old flame, like they used to date, woo, woo, woo. And so we're caught in the middle of, ooh, my guy with the visuals, man. Thank you. YouTube audience, y'all are getting a treat right now, man. But this is so this conversation starts to happen between the individual that's here on the screen that's dressed as a woman or in typically woman's clothes, and this gentleman. and we're caught, and they are having the conversation literally on both sides of Earn. So we are in the perspective of Earn, caught in the middle of this conversation where the elephant in the room is this person's sexuality. And that's multiplied by the fact that it's a black show, that most of the people in the area are black. And so there are two things that happen in really quick succession. Somebody brings up that this person is a man, disregarding however they identify or how the other person sees them, and that shatters the illusion. And this funny, humorous moment just devolves into this like bitter recognition of like, but we can't just allow each other to get by. We're bringing each other down. We're pointing out these flaws and shattering this illusion. Even when it's all of us, we're all in this jail cell. We should all be in the same position. And so really quickly after that, somebody kind of points that out, and the guy goes, well, you did this. You were getting oral sex from a dude while you were behind bars. And he says, that ain't gay. That's just jail. Right.
Yeah.
And so here in this scene, the man who was dressed in women's clothing, or however that person identifies, feels uncomfortable. The other guy feels emasculated. Earn feels awkward. And we're left sitting in this very human moment that started off so funny. And I think that is the difference between Dave and Atlanta, is that Dave, well, there's one more difference, but we'll get there. But Atlanta is so much more invested in bringing you that human moment and making it feel like life, whereas Dave is interested in telling you the story of these characters and always ending with that joke, or always ending with that, maintaining that tonal humor, even sometimes at the sacrifice of the message.
I can see that. And I think the question then comes into play, which is that, is the ability to create something that's so niche and relatable a greater skill than the ability to create something that is just so widespread in popularity, right? So, for instance, with Atlanta, my G, you have that scene, the barbershop. The barbershop episode is one of my favorite episodes. That right there, if you don't know the barbershop experience, what's the barbershop episode, and that'll give it to you, right? But then also at the same time, you flip over onto the day side. If you've never been a black man amongst just the white experience, as the Gator episode on the Bar Mitzvah episode, Gator sleeping over at Lil Dicky's house, and then also on Dicky's end, there is a high level of vulnerability that comes. He shows a high level of creative vulnerability with just the regards to the subject content matter that he's trying to go into. I think back on episode 10, season 1, which is hilarious. That is hilarious. When he's in jail and he's rapping about willing head. Willing head. You know what I mean? Like that type of vulnerability.
You good?
Yeah, sorry about that. Just getting messages. That type of vulnerability just allows for what I think to be a super good show, man. A super good show. We are running late on time, but I do want us to rate these things before we get out of here. What we saying?
Hold on. Yeah, I agree. I got one more point that kind of ties into that, because I think the vulnerability of Dave is one of its high point. But I think the key difference between the show is that Dave is interested in putting forth this narrative, this simple story about this guy, and where it gets tripped up is it acknowledges the silliness of the humor that it's based in, but sometimes still uses that humor as a crutch. And I think what Atlanta excels at is marrying its elements of realism, like hyper realism, and like a little bit of just like this weird like surrealism. And it takes these moments where I'm thinking of Paperboy when he's wandering through the woods and finds the homeless or crazy man that's talking to him, and you're not really sure if that man was real, or the sandwich guy that's on the bus with Earn that says, bite this sandwich, and you're not sure. And it's these super surreal moments that ground the show in its realness. And so I think Atlanta's ability to make Atlanta a character, whether it's referencing the lemon pepper wet wings that are only available in that specific region, right? Its ability to create episodes like the Drake episode, where this whole thing is built around the idea of the celebrity, but the celebrity never shows up. And yet you feel that them, their house even is a character in the show and gets at these such human emotions. Atlanta just has this way of making you question everything and making you think while you're watching what is super relatable and super enjoyable. I'll end it by saying, to me, Atlanta is soul food, and Dave is pizza. And if I were inviting as many people, more people to my crib, and wanted them to all have something on the table that they could enjoy, I would go with Dave, because that's pizza. But if I was kicking it with a smaller group of the homies and wanted to share something that really resonates with who we are and what we're about and the weirdness that we confront in this world, I'm going with Atlanta, putting soul food on the table.
Atlanta to me is a 5 out of 5 show, man. So it's only right that for Dave, I give it an official review of 4 out of 5 mics. I totally dig Dave. I think this is absolutely brilliant writing. I think that season 1 to season 2 is very, very strong. A lot of vulnerability, and you know how we feel about that. This is dope. Super dope, man. That's what I give it.
Yes, sir. Yep. I would say, yep, I'm right in the same area. 4 out of 5 mics for Dave, 5 out of 5 mics for Gator as a character. That is beautiful acting, beautiful emotional work, and a 5 out of 5 for me for Atlanta. That is my favorite show on television, and I was able to defend it and give a review of it without even mentioning the best episode, Ban, the episode with its own built-in commercials, like satirical. Yes. It is incredible. So we clearly recommend these 2 shows. Go out there on your couch, enjoy that. What we saying, man? What we doing, man? I think I don't want to rush this big crit.
We can't rush the crit
catalog review.
We can't rush the crit. I have to say, there's a few things I need to say. Is that I was wrong about giving Isaiah Rashad 4.5 out of 5. That's a 5 out of 5 album. I was wrong about that. 5 out of 5. I'll leave it there. Boom.
Yep. Yes, sir, man. I think that's album of the year so far, but we can have a discussion about that. This one has been chock full, packed to the gills, man. We gave y'all a little something extra on top of the 8th. You know what I'm saying? It's busting out the package. We know that y'all have so many choices, man. We know. That's why we do this, man. That's why we here, man. That's why we here, you know? So we hope that you got something that you really rocked with and resonated out of the topics that we got into today. We hope that you felt that you were celebrating with us for Meek, celebrating with us for Zway. You know what I'm saying? That you felt it with us when we talking about Haiti, when we talking about Stop Asian Hate. The range of this show is incredible, and it can only be that way because of my brother, man. Shout out to him, man. We got to drop bombs for the job he did with the visuals today. We love you if you're checking us out on Spotify, but if you ain't checking us out on YouTube, we're giving you reasons to feel like you missing out. So switch, go back and forth, man. Do both. You know what I'm saying? It's there for you. Cause we know.
Cause we know. We
aware, man. You know what I'm saying? It is inescapable that y'all have a million choices when it comes to listening to a podcast, and we appreciate you rocking with All the Way Live. We know you had to scroll past some other stuff, clicked on us. We appreciate you. We are grateful before we are conscious. We are celebrating life. We are celebrating how good it feels to be Black. Don't it feel good?
It's my favorite thing, baby.
And we hope it feels good to be you. So wherever you at, eat something delicious, hug somebody you love, watch Dave or Atlanta or that new Suicide Squad or Summer of Soul. There's a little of everything in there. I gave you TV, movie, documentary. Get with it, man. We got y'all. Peace, love, water.